Hello, this is Brooks Whittington with halfwheel.com. Today we're taking a look at the Siglo Hexagon scissors cutter. Now the Siglo brand is based in Hong Kong and is owned by the Pacific Cigar Company Limited, which is also the distributor of Habanos SA products in the Asia Pacific region. The company's Siglo Hexagon scissors is a cutter with two blades that is designed in the shape of a hexagon, obviously with the name, that opens and closes in a way that is reminiscent of Pac-Man back in the day. Like that. See? Now, there are actually two different sizes of this cutter. There's a large, which is this one that I'm reviewing today, and there's the small version, which you can see here. Now, both cigar cutters do come with a fitted leather pouch that goes over the cutter and protects it. And the prices are $109 for the smaller version and $116 for the larger version. Now, in terms of physical specifications, the Hexagon scissors has two handles that are connected via a single hinge, as you can see right here, that when opened reveals two curved blades. Now, the blades don't necessarily come apart on their own very much. I didn't have a problem with it. However, they don't actually have a lock of any sort, so it's something to be aware of if you're carrying around in your pocket or your bag or something of that nature. The body of the cutter and the blades are both made of stainless steel, and the large cutter weighs 35.5 grams and is only 0.10 inches thick. It measures 2.5 inches high, 2.75 inches wide, and 5 inches when it's fully open. All right, now that all that's out of the way, let's cut some cigars. So one of my bigger issues that I had with this cutter comes down to the quality of the cuts that I received when I was actually using it. There was quite a few cigars. In fact, out of 46 cigars, 19 of them, about 50%, close to 50%, ended up with issues. The majority were minor issues, little pieces of tobacco coming off or little pieces of the wrap coming off. But there were other issues when it comes to larger problems, like, being so bad that it damaged the actual cigar and actually caused the wrapper to unwind. And so it's definitely something that I noticed as I was testing it. But it's also fairly awkward to use, and I will show you now how that is, if you didn't see already. So after testing, I realized that there was a specific way that was best for me to use this cutter. And basically, I pick up the cutter and I put my middle finger and my ring finger into this opening here. I'm right-handed. And I put my thumb in between the blade and this edge of the cutter here. And I have to kind of shove it in there a little bit because I'm kind of a big guy. And so, obviously, people with smaller thumbs might not have to shove it in quite as much. Then for support, my index finger goes on top and my pinky goes on the bottom. And what this does is it allows me to actually open up this part of the blade, and keep this one relatively stable. Now, it's not completely stable, not even close, but it definitely does better than any other way that I tested. You take the cap of the cigar and you put it into the opening. And as you can see, I can see just a little bit of that cap and how much I'm taking off. But a lot of times my thumb is kind of in the way there. And because of that, I can't see as much as I'd like to. Certainly not as much as you can with a pair of scissors, cigar scissors. But you definitely want to get in there, get to see as much as you can. And then when you're ready, you push down on this blade and push it through as quickly and easily as possible. Now, this is a fairly clean cut for this cutter specifically. It's certainly not 100% by any means, but there's no major damage, and it's not straight, but it's certainly smokable. I would consider this a good cut for this cutter, but certainly a lot of the other ones that I cut, a lot of the other cigars that I cut with this cutter did not have even close to that good of cuts. One other thing is the fact that larger ring gauges seem to have more problems. You're pushing through a lot of tobacco, and this is a 60 ring gauge, and when you're pushing through that much tobacco, there just seems to be a lot more issues when it comes to the quality of the cuts themselves. And so you're going to have, apparently, From my testing, you're going to have a lot more of these little pieces, and I did have a lot more of the damage around the cap of the cigar as well for those longer ring gauges. So I would definitely think twice before using it on something like a 58 or a 60 if you get this cutter, because it just the number of cigars that I had issues with definitely increased the larger the ring gauge that I used it on. So now it's time to go through some good things that I liked about the cutter and some bad things that I didn't necessarily like about the cutter. And on the top of the good list, if you will, is the fact that it's just so thin and so light. It's surprisingly thin, to the point where you kind of forget that you have it in your pocket. I did multiple times, and that's certainly not normal when it comes to most cigar cutters these days. Secondly, it's got great visual appeal. The aesthetics of the actual cutter itself is very, very interesting. Doesn't look like many things on the market right now. And if you hand it to somebody and say, hey, take a look at this, it's going to start a conversation, something that I love, about cutters when it's possible to do that. And it's definitely something that works in a unique way to the point where it's just a very interesting thing to carry around and a very interesting thing to use visually. Now, the other great thing about this cutter is the fact that it does come with a fitted leather sheath in the price. And, while it is a leather sheath, typically that adds a little bit of bulk. This one is actually designed specifically for the cutter. As you can see, it goes right in there just like that. It can only go one way. It can't go the other way. But it doesn't add that much bulk to the overall feel of the cutter, which I thought was, ingenious. Just a great feel, and you put this in your pocket with the sheath. It protects it well, and it's really a great thing to have, and nice that it comes included in the price. Now, having said all of that, there are some things that I did not like about the Siglo Hexagon scissors cutter, and the biggest issue that I had was the inconsistency of the cuts that I was getting from this cutter, and the quality of the cuts. In fact, for a total of 46 cigars, some of which were cut for reviews, some of which weren't, 19 of those cigars, close to 40%, ended up with issues, spanning from minor cracks in the tobacco at the top of the cigar to fairly major damage to the entire cap, which caused the wrapper to unravel. And that is unacceptable for a cigar cutter of this price, and certainly not something that I wanted to continue using, knowing that it was possibly going to damage cigars. Now, in addition to that, the fact is that this is a very awkward cutter to use. The process is time-consuming, it's annoying, and it doesn't get any better, even if you continue using it. I've had products on this site where I have had an annoying start, and it's a process that you have to get used to, but eventually it gets better. This is not one of those products. Every time I pick up this cutter, it is a process that I do not want to go through, and I can't even imagine the idea of giving this cutter to somebody and saying, here, you need a cutter, here's one. They would struggle 9 times out of 10 easily with just trying to actually get this thing to cut a cigar. And that's not a great thing when you're talking about a cutter that costs this much. Finally, despite the name that it has, this is not a pair of cigar scissors. As you see here, this is a pair of cigar scissors, and this is not the same. Now, despite the, other than the obvious differences in, bulkiness and that kind of thing, there are some significant differences in how these things work. A pair of cigar scissors, when you put your fingers into this opening, which can be as large as they want to be because, they have the room. When you're opening and closing these cigar scissors, the force is being transferred from your fingers here all the way to the blades here. This gives you a lot more control and access to what you're trying to do with these scissors. In addition, you have a lot more visibility when you're talking about actually cutting this cap of this cigar, because your hands are way down here and the cap of the cigar is way up here. And if you look at the difference here when you're actually using this product, the force is actually directly on the blades, and because of that, it's going to be a very different situation when you're pushing those blades through the cap of the cigar. Not only that, but you don't have the visibility that you do when the hands are all the way away from the cap of the cigar. if you see the name of these of this product and assume that these are cigar scissors, like a portable pair of cigar scissors, you're going to be disappointed. It doesn't look like a pair of cigar scissors. It doesn't function like a pair of cigar scissors. And it certainly does not cut cigars as well as a pair of cigar scissors. And so in the end, can I recommend the Siglo Hexagon scissors cutter? The answer is no. And really, it comes down to the quality of the cuts. You can't depend on the cutter to actually give you good cuts every single time or even close to it. And if that's the case, then it's really worthless as a cigar cutter. Now there are other issues. There's the awkwardness and the fact that it's not intuitive, the fact that it's fairly expensive. These are all also something to be mentioned. But it really comes down to the quality of the cuts, and this cutter does not perform the way that it should and the way that you need it to. So that's my opinion. For all of your premium cigar needs when it comes to news and reviews, go to halfwheel.com.